It's a question we've all probably asked ourselves at some point. Am I just wired for anxiety? Is something like depression just part of my code? Today, we're diving deep into the science that connects our genes to our mental health. We're going to ask the big question, how much of our story is truly written in our DNA?
I mean, really think about that for a second. Your eye color? Okay, probably. Your height? Mostly, yeah. But what about your personality, your moods? How much of that is locked in from day one, and how much of it is shaped by the life you actually live? That's the core question we're going to try and unpack together.
All right, so to even begin to answer that, we've got to start with the basics. Let's take a look at your genetic blueprint, what I like to call the hardware and the software that makes you, well, you.
So everything, and I mean everything, starts right here with DNA. This stuff is the body's ultimate instruction manual. It's a biological code that lays out the plans for everything from the color of your hair to the incredibly complex wiring of your brain. It's the foundational text for your entire existence.
Now, here is an amazing way to think about it. Imagine your body is a computer. Your DNA, your whole genome, that's the hardware. It's the physical machine you get right out of the box. But the epigenome, that's the software. It's the dynamic, flexible program that tells the hardware what to actually do. It's what tells your genes when to power on and when to shut down. It's how a cell in your eye knows to be an eye cell and not, a kidney cell.
And this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. You can actually influence that software. Your everyday life, what you eat, if you exercise, your stress levels, how you sleep, all of it can place these tiny chemical tags on your DNA. These tags act like little dimmer switches, telling your genes to be more or less active. So your life experiences are literally in a constant, ongoing conversation with your genetic code. It's wild.
Okay, so if genes are this important, you can see why the next logical step for scientists was to find the gene for every condition, right? This kicked off a massive hunt for a simple answer, a single culprit. But what they found instead was, well, what we now call the one-gene myth.
So check this out, because this chart tells such a powerful story. Over on the left, for a trait like eye color, genetics is pretty much destiny. We're talking 96%. For height, it's still a huge factor, around 80%. But look what happens when we get to something as complex as schizophrenia. The genetic influence drops all the way down to 50%. This was one of the first major clues that for mental health, genes are a massive piece of the puzzle, for sure, but they are not the whole picture.
Which, of course, brings up the million-dollar question. If genes play a role, can we find the gene for depression, or for anxiety, or for any other mental health condition for that matter?
And the answer, from one of the world's leading geneticists, Robert Plomin, is a hard no. The whole search for a single depression gene turned out to be a dead end. He realized the problem wasn't qualitative. It's not like a light switch that's either on or off. It's quantitative. It's not about if you have a certain gene. It's about how many tiny little genetic variations you have that all add up.
And that realization completely changed the game. It brings us to how we see genetics and mental health today. It's not about finding one star player anymore. It's about understanding how the entire team of genes works together.
The key concept here is this word, polygenicity. Now, it sounds super technical, but it's actually a pretty simple idea. It just means that complex traits, like our mental well-being, aren't controlled by one superstar gene. Nope. Instead, they're influenced by this huge team, hundreds, maybe even thousands of genes all working together, with each one contributing just a tiny, almost unnoticeable effect on its own.
So here's the crucial shift in thinking. We need to stop seeing mental health conditions as an on-off switch. It's not that you either have depression or you don't. It's a continuous spectrum, like a bell curve, and all of us fall somewhere along it. A diagnosis just means you happen to be at one end of that very normal, natural distribution.
And what's really cool is that this genetic view actually makes things way simpler. Instead of trying to track dozens of separate disorders, the research shows they all kind of group together into three big genetic families. You've got internalizing, things like anxiety and depression, then externalizing ones like addiction and psychotic experiences. This genetic overlap is exactly why a parent with, say, depression might have a child with anxiety. They're just different branches growing from the same genetic tree.
Okay, so if we're dealing with thousands of these tiny little genetic effects all adding up, how on earth do scientists even begin to measure that? Well, this is where we get into the incredible tools they're now using to read our genetic scorecard.
The real workhorse of modern genetics is something called a genome-wide association study, or GWAS for short. And at its core, it's a beautiful idea. Scientists take huge groups of people, we're talking thousands or even millions. scan their complete DNA, and look for these tiny common variations called SNPs. Then they just see which of those markers show up more often in people who have a certain trait, like depression.
And the scale of this work it's just mind-boggling. A huge study back in 2021 looked at the DNA of 1.2 million people. And guess what? They didn't find one gene for depression. They found 178 of them. And each one was just adding a tiny little drop to the bucket of risk. It's the ultimate proof of polygenicity in action.
So by adding up all those tiny effects from all your personal genetic markers, scientists can create what's called a polygenic score. Now, this score doesn't say, you are definitely going to get depressed. Not at all. It just says, hey, based on your specific genetics, you have a certain likelihood or predisposition. Think of it like a weather forecast for your health. It's not a prophecy.
Okay, so what does all of this mean for the future? For how we actually diagnose and treat mental health? Well, this is where things get really, really exciting. We are right on the edge of a massive shift, from diagnosing based on symptoms to diagnosing based on causes.
See, for decades, psychiatry has used the DSM, the Big Diagnostic Manual, which is basically a catalog of symptoms. It's all about what we can see on the outside. But this new way, powered by genetics, lets us look under the hood for the very first time and start to understand the underlying biological risk. It's a total game changer, moving from symptoms to the root cause.
And the implications for you, for all of us, are huge. It means we could pinpoint people who are most at risk long before they ever show symptoms and actually offer preventative care. We can finally move past this one-size-fits-all approach and towards truly personalized medicine. Remember, this isn't about predicting destiny. It's about empowerment. It's about using the knowledge of our risks to help us make better choices.
You know, as we wrap up, it's worth remembering this one incredible fact. For all of our amazing diversity as human beings, 99% of our genetic code is identical from person to person. Every difference we've been talking about, all of our unique quirks and predispositions, it's all packed into that tiny remaining 1%. So we end right back where we started. Your genetics, they provide the blueprint, the predispositions, the hardware you're born with. But it is not destiny. Your environment, your habits, your choices, they all help rewrite the software every single day. So the real question is, knowing that, what will you do with your 1%?